Alright, so this is gonna explain the questions from Module 3, and I don't know where my pen went. Anyways, for Module 3. So, here we go. Answering questions 1 through 5. Question 1. In the first reading, which was written as President Obama ran for re-election, the author posts that the election of the first president who was also a person of color was a significant point in U.S. American history, one that some argued was the debut of a post-racial society. Why did some presume this to indicate the U.S. is/was post-racial, and using the current readings from those from Module 1 and 2, what might our various authors argue? So your supports, your sources or whatever. So I came up with, it led people to believe that our society was changing from a predominantly white justice to a more diverse one. It allowed those who felt oppressed about their beliefs, race, culture, etc. to feel more open and accepted. From page 1 and reading 1. From page 1 from this reading, and then also from reading number 1, I don't remember the page. So basically what I thought was, like, since we elected Barack Obama, it felt maybe other races felt more accepted, that, like, oh hey, it's not just a white president now, it's like a different, like, in their point of view, like a different race, and so now they're more accepting of us, and so maybe we should stop being oppressed. I mean, that's what I came up with. Question 2. We've seen race addressed as a number of different kinds of constructs. Explain what the authors mean by stating that race is a socio-political construction. Be sure to cite your text. The author said that race was a social political construction because it made it to where there was a separation between whites and everyone else. This was because race itself started in the US to justify who was more dominant or powerful. It turned into a white supremacy that lasted for several years. It made it to where whites felt more in control and they had more control over the other groups, whereas the other groups felt they were more oppressed and they didn't have a say because there were more whites than there were of them. And I found it on page 2. Question 3. Dr. Daniel Tatum discusses racism as something distinctively separate, though similar to prejudice. Using her essay readings from modules 1 and 2, explain racism from the perspective of Dr. Daniel Tatum. How does it work? How is it different than prejudice? What does this mean for the typical student explanation or dictionary definition of racism? So I put racism works when one group has more advantages than the other through physical appearances, religion, or cultural backgrounds. It is different from prejudice because you are not taking your own beliefs or biases and blocking the view or outcome of what is in front of you. The dictionary says a prejudice says prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one group is more superior is racism. So essentially the definitions sound the same, but what I gather from Daniel Tatum is that you can take prejudice out of racism and only use it as discrimination and antagonism rather than all three, is what I'm assuming is the difference. And I got it from page 2 to 3 and then 7 to 8 as well of this week's reading. Question 4. Explain the problem with racialized mascots. Why do you believe we continue to see Native American depictions as mascots, though excluding the rare Viking or Irish image? No other racial groups. Why does larger society not see this as a racial problem? How do previous module readings explain this issue? Be sure to cite. So I thought of the problem with racialized mascots is simply the idea of someone dressing up in a costume and flaunting it in front of hundreds to thousands of people, essentially making fun of one's culture or belief without knowing that they are making fun of it. An example from the book talked about the Washington Redskins. Obviously, there are no Indians with red skin, but to that culture it's offensive. I honestly don't know why we see more Indian mascots. To be honest, I only know of the Redskins to have an Indian mascot. All the other mascots I know are animals. So I didn't know how to answer that part of the question. I didn't want to come up with something and be false about it because I don't know any information. So I just didn't want to answer it because I only know animals. I'm assuming larger societies don't see it as a problem because they are unaware of it being a problem. Through the process of disconscious racism, they don't know that the mascot's making fun of another culture because they don't have enough knowledge on that culture to understand that it's making fun of the culture. And I don't remember anything from the previous modules that were related to the mascots, but I got it from page 10 to 12 of this week's reading. Question 5. What does it mean for white folks to accept our legacy? How does this happen and how is it communicated? What are the consequences personally and culturally of this? How do our other modules connect to this challenge? Be sure to cite the text. So I'm assuming what they mean by by accepting our legacy is white legacy, and it's basically like what we've done up until now, with the exception of not including the superiority, but rather the idea of not forgetting who we are as people, accepting the fact that yes, we have caused a lot of problems before us, but rather moving on and trying to fix it for our other legacies. So trying to fix all of the racism, the sexism, the culturism, like the lines between each of those, and trying to become one big society with all of these problems, putting aside our beliefs and uh, putting aside, the challenge will be to educate. Not everyone will be willing to learn about this, but if we can educate 5 people every day or a week on what it means to accept everyone for who or what they are as a person or what they believe in, it will make a change. We all don't have to believe in the same things, but we don't have to call people out on it and argue to persuade someone to be on your side, and that only what you believe is the only option to believe in. That's what I was trying to explain. I forgot that I had another page. So that was it for this week's reading. I actually understood this week's reading more than the other week's reading for some reason. I think I